Hello and welcome to yet one more episode of Give Me the Mic. So, this time I'm talking about an old topic, and it's at least 6 months to 1 year past due, which is Zapier's Sub-Zaps. Now, the reason I'm talking about it now because I just recently started using it more, and it is super powerful. I don't know how I waited all that time to use it. I will show you the basics of it, and I realized that Zapier doesn't talk about it enough. Before we jump straight to the topic, do not forget to subscribe, that will support me immensely. So with that, let's just dive right in. Okay, Sub-Zaps. Now, to start with, there is not a secret location for Sub-Zaps and creating them. They actually operate like a normal Zap, but you'll have to build them in a specific way. So you can see here I have a folder for my Sub-Zaps where I have 3 Sub-Zaps so far, and I'll show you how those works, and we'll try to build one with each other. So let me go to one of them. So Sub-Zaps in concept are automations that are reoccurrent, things that you find yourself using again and again and again. And to save yourself time without rebuilding them each time you need them, you actually can build it once and then use it as a normal step in any of your automation. Now, the example I'm showing you here is something that I definitely use a lot, which is whenever I have a Perplexity search happening, I get the results. Usually I try to prompt Perplexity to give the response to me in a JSON format. So I want to go through certain steps to get some content to use in other steps depending on the Zap. So what I find myself always doing, and it's the same way every time, is that once I get that JSON body from Perplexity as a response, usually it's dirty, like it has some text before it, text after it, and then the JSON is the middle, is I want to parse it. So I have a step which is code by Zapier. You can see it here. Some code I just got from Claude that does 2 things. It parses the results and gives me the results in 2 groups and each with its object. So let me close this. And then as you see here, I have the scraping that comes after passing the object. So I have the objects already. I have keys and values in 2 groups. So I want to do the scraping into 2 steps. The reason I do that because there's a 39-second time limit or timeout limit in Zapier. And if the content I'm scraping is heavy, it might take more than that. So I break it down to 2 steps. That's the only reason. And I have, by the way, a full episode on 5 tools and methods to do scraping in your automation. If this is something you want to understand, I'll leave a link for that video in the description and maybe at the end screens. So I do the scraping, and then once I have scraping, I want to take all that text and put it somewhere. So I create a file from text. This is a Google Drive step. And then I have a file on Google Drive, and then I take that file and I upload it to ChatGPT as a file. And then I end the Sub-Zap. Now, every time, I have something where I want to search the internet and get results, I use the same steps. So rather than recreating them every time, you can see we're talking about at least 7 or 8 steps. So I create one Sub-Zap, and later on I'll show you where it goes in a normal automation. I just plug it once as one step, call this Sub-Zap, it will do everything for me, and it will return specific outputs I define. For me, what I'm interested in is the file ID for the ChatGPT and then the file ID for the Google Drive. And what that does is that whenever I want to go and have a conversation with an assistant in ChatGPT, I can simply refer to the existing file that I uploaded to ChatGPT, and it will basically read all the content of that file and gives me whatever I'm asking for. So this way, I can be creating a blog or a post on LinkedIn. I will actually be doing research online, automated for me, and get the gist of it in a blog post or in a LinkedIn kind of post. Again, if you want any of these automations to be covered in detail, just tell me in the comment section, and I will be more than glad to do a specific video around these automations, how to create them and automate them. So this is my first Sub-Zap. Let me show you one more example, and then I'll show you how it works in the automation, and then we'll build one just for fun. So I'll go back to the Sub-Zap folder, and the other one I created that I use a lot is deleting those files. I don't want to keep my files once I create them on Google Drive and on ChatGPT. So what I do once all that automation happens, so I get my information, I create the post or the blog post or whatever it is I'm doing. Then I run this, which basically takes the output that I created in the first one, the IDs, the two IDs, the ChatGPT file ID and the Google Drive file ID, and I simply do a delete function for each of them. Now, for ChatGPT, if you're interested in that, I created a custom action for it. I have an episode on custom actions. Again, I'll put it in the description. And here I was able to use an API endpoint that is not existing in Zapier. I don't know if it's existing in Make, but it's a very simple one where I just add this URL, I do a delete method, I add the file ID. Once I run it, the file is deleted from ChatGPT side. And for Google Drive, the delete file function is already embedded in Zapier. So again, I get the delete file ID from the previous Sub-Zap. So I get back this ID, which I use here to delete the file. And I finish my automation. I don't have any files, but the automation ran and I have my blog post or post. Okay, so now before we go build a Sub-Zap together, let's just quickly look at an automation with a running Sub-Zap as a step so you can get the idea how it works. So I'll go to this one. This is basically an automation that creates for me a blog post, usually around AI specifically, in my website hosted on Shopify. And it's a long zap and it was longer, more complex. I just made it a little bit simpler and I have less steps to look at when it comes to this. So I can potentially create even more Sub-Zaps and make this whole thing into 5 steps max. I just started working on Sub-Zaps recently, so I will be slowly but surely building more of them and using more of them. And the good thing that if I didn't mention before about Sub-Zaps, that even if you want to do debugging, fixing a certain aspect of those Sub-Zaps, you can just do it in one place and all the automations that use that Sub-Zap are already fixed. So that's always a good benefit that will save you time. So here you can see in this automation at some point, I create the blog entry in Shopify and then I send myself an email that's done. But the most important part, I want to do the internet research and I want to get my file IDs that I can use later on. So here, this is the actually the search I do on Perplexity. So this is simply a Perplexity API call, and you can see here it's pulling information from a database. Previous episode just about that, how to manage your AI. But basically what I get out of this is the JSON body. And before we build the Sub-Zap, actually I'll go there and show you how that works exactly. So once I do this step, I get the JSON body as an output. Let me show you an example of how it looks. So if I go to edit, and then I go to test, I go to data out. So this is the JSON body that I get. So you can see it's not clean, it needs cleaning. This is why I use the Sub-Zap and all other steps. You can see it has the source, some description, and the URL for each of the sources I get. Now, once I run this step here, which is the Sub-Zap, so let me zoom in. Okay, so once I have that JSON body, this is the only input needed for this step. And you can see here in the test, what it gets as data in is the JSON text. Simply this text is the input. And then if we go to see the data out, it will be simply 2 files, the Google Drive file ID and the ChatGPT file ID. And this is something I defined in the Sub-Zap itself to receive that one input and to deliver those 2 outputs out of that step. And that's it. Everything else is custom made for this specific Zap, so I don't need to worry about it. And as I said, I can potentially do more and more Sub-Zaps to cover more steps. So let's go back to the Sub-Zap and let me just show you how it looks from the inside. And maybe we build one for fun. So let's edit the draft here. So if you see simply here, the event is start a Sub-Zap, and then the trigger is where you put what input will come. And it's simply what you're putting here is a label / key for the input. So I called one Google Drive ID and the other one is ChatGPT ID. Later on, as far as it is concerned, it's looking that it will receive 2 inputs. The only thing you need to do here is just give it names. And then you can test it. It will just create a record for you, a dummy record. And then you go to the steps. So here, this is my API call for ChatGPT and deleting the file here. So what I do simply is I pull the ID that I get as an input that I defined. I created that ID as a definition, and I plug it in here. I get it, it executes, and at the end, the action is what do we send back? So after you run this and this, you get a result or status of did that API call happen? Is it successful? So, and I don't use it because in my Zap, in my automation, this usually is the last step here. So that result goes nowhere, but I just put it because you cannot complete the Zap and actually deploy it without having an output. So whatever you do, it should have an input and an output. So let's go back to the Sub-Zap and let's go back here and let's build a new one from scratch. You create a normal Zap. So as far as Zapier is concerned, when you build the Sub-Zap, it's a normal Zap. So we create one. We'll call it a new Zap. So let me give it a name. So let's call it an email Sub-Zap. And let's create something that you send it two inputs. One is an email ID, and then the other one is text. And the email ID will go well. In an email ID to send an email, and the text will go into the body of that email to send. Okay, so what we do here is we want to create a trigger. Once you select the Sub-Zap, you just search for Sub-Zap here in the search field. You get Sub-Zap by Zapier, you click on it, and then you have to choose the event. The event will choose so for a trigger, there's only one event possible, which is start Sub-Zap. We hit continue, and this is the input I just showed you for the other Sub-Zap. So we set two, so we need email ID, and then this is one. The second one, email underscore. So we have those two inputs. We hit continue, we hit test, and I have a dummy record. It says missing sample data, which is fine. We hit continue here. Now I will add a send email kind of step now, and I will use for that Outlook. So let's use Microsoft Outlook, and it is send email, continue. And here, the from email, you can leave it blank because it already is connected to your record or your account. The to can basically something come from the Zap, and I'll select the email ID. And then I'll go down to the subject. I can just call it test because it's a must, it's required. The body format will make it text, normal text, and the body can be simply the email body. And then I'll add a final step, which is simply, again, Sub-Zap. This is an action. And here you'll find there's two events. This is return from a Sub-Zap. So this is what you need to do here. So I want to return information. And let's do this before I go here. I think the test will fail. That's fine. So we can send back that result. Okay, or actually let's skip the test. So if I go here now to the action again. So the output I want to return, email status, and basically I'll look into this. Yeah, you can see here you have some kind of inputs. Now, once you test it for the first time, actually more will populate. But now, just to get it running so we can publish it, I'll just put anything else here. For example, the test message from the subject. I'll hit continue, and I'll hit test step. That's it. And I can publish. Now it's a Sub-Zap ready to be used. So whatever Zap I create, I can literally use this to send an email and plug it into any step. Obviously, this is not a good Sub-Zap because it's all about one step, but you can do many things here and then keep using them over and over. The most important step is this, and this the last one. It's a headache, honestly, for the first time you create it, because as you've seen, I have to run this on an actual. So what you do is you plug in an actual email by text and the actual body just to test it. You do the test, and then you will get the actual outputs from the step of sending email, and then you can put the proper output, especially if it's an output that you will use in further steps. So Zapier, if you're listening, you can make this a little bit easier, but this is how it works essentially. And believe me, it is a super powerful tool that we have in Zapier. Go ahead, test it. Tell me what you think if you've already tested it. And is there a better use of Sub-Zaps you think? Write me a comment in the comment section. And if you like the videos I do, you like this one, you want me to do specific content, write me a comment again. And do not forget to like, subscribe please. That will help the channel a lot. And with that, have a great day.